Big man ting, smash the like button and subscribe. So as you man can see on your screen, or as you saw at the start of this video, Anthony, the cheek buster, Joshua, has posted a few videos of him banging the heavy bag and banging the pads. Now, of course, is this a lovely display of raw, underlying genetic force? Absolutely. However, I'm taking a different approach on this. Now, we saw this first video, or the video of him on the bag, was about 2-3 weeks ago. The last video is more recent, in the last few days. Now, at first glance, as I said, it's raw power. Yeah, we know that. We know AJ has a monster bang. The monster, yeah? The monster. Oi, oi. You got the monster bang 100% confirmed, no doubt. However, what worries me is people say things like, "Oh, YB, you only see a little bit of the training. You don't know what's going on, rah 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 rah." But what worries me is the fact that this is now consistent, as in we've got two pieces of footage weeks apart. Now, I guess to be fair, you could argue, well, YB, he's only going to put out the frilly stuff. But I'm just going to take and I'm just going to take what I see now and deduct accordingly. One of my main criticisms of AJ in the Pulev fight was his loading up. We saw him in that fight in round 2, or whatever round it was, at the start of the fight when he hurt Pulev. We saw him, rather than take his time, dissect Pulev, back him up to the ropes, and then dig away. We saw him loading up, missing big right hands, missing big hooks, banging big uppercuts all into the same place. No variety, no mixture, no finesse, no accuracy, or very little accuracy. And that allowed Pulev to get out of the second round. In my opinion, if AJ had calmed down a little bit, stalked Pulev, picked his shots, mixed head and body, only loaded up when Pulev was really ready to go, or when Pulev was clearly lined up against the ropes and nowhere to move to. AJ was loading up when Pulev was in the middle of the ring, still walking, hence he'd load up, plant his feet, load up, and Pulev would be 2 inches out of the way, kind of thing, or 6 inches out of the way. Just little things like that, which obviously it's avoidable. Now 2-2s, we're months later, or a month or two later down the line, and we're seeing the same things being practiced. We know AJ's proven he can load up, alright. That's not the parts of his game that he needs to work on. Now, some of you man will be saying, "Oh, YB, I'm sure he's doing it in other parts of his training." I don't know. I'm just going on what we saw in the performance, because we can all speculate about what might be going on behind closed doors. What we know is what we saw in the Pulev fight wasn't, innit? What we saw in the Pulev fight implied he isn't focusing on the finesse in training, because if he was, we'd see more elements of it displayed. Now, the same thing we're going back to the drawing board again, or back to the training room, and we're seeing AJ and his team focusing on the same things we know he can do. We know he's got the monster bang. He needs to focus on actually landing it. Now, getting more specific, okay, YB, you say that AJ needs to focus on finesse and accuracy more. How does this training not show accuracy? Well, let's go back to the bag stuff. You see here AJ really winding it up, and this is something that got him caught in the Ruiz fight. You see AJ pivot at his hips and really wind up the hook. You see AJ's arm and his hand literally almost near his back, because he's wound it up so much. And you see, just watch it on the heavy bag. You see him wind up. You see his hips and his feet almost rotate outwards so to come back in. That's what you call winding up and loading up. Is it okay to do it in training if you want to kind of get your cardio up and work on some raw explosive power? Yes, it's not bad to do as a training exercise, but when it starts filtering through into your performances, you have to rein it back. We've seen many fighters, you don't need all this loading up to knock someone out. And actually, I think that's one of the reasons AJ doesn't get the KOs, because people say, well, in boxing, it's the shots you don't see. Well, guess what? There isn't a fighter. You can be Ray Charles can see that shot coming, because it's all in the body. The best hooks are almost like the flicks. Look at like Ryan Garcia, for example. When he stepped in, you didn't see him swinging his hips, and you just saw him step in and flick his wrist almost, and it slapped on his body. Obviously it was powerful, but it's the flick. No tell. The best hooks and the best uppercuts are almost like the flicks. When you're moving your hips, trained men, they've seen that before. You know, that's almost like an amateur move, is to load up. The most finesse is when you just flick your wrist and you hit an accurate point. When Ryan Garcia threw that hook, it was accurate, clean on the liver. Now, I'm not saying he practiced that, but I'm just saying what we saw. Meanwhile, when AJ was in there with Pulev, I didn't see one body shot the whole night. I didn't see any just touching. It was either really weak soft jab, or it was going mad, like you know what I'm saying? There was no middle ground. You didn't see AJ in there just working a little bit. Okay, I'm going to touch him to the body a little bit, and then I'm going to bang hard. You didn't see any, just mixing up the levels. And not only mixing up the head and the body, I mean the power levels. Sometimes you want to just touch a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Just get in there, get comfortable. Get that Epstein game on. You know what I'm saying? Just start feeling people out. Touching them all over. You didn't see that. It was all kind of madness. I'm going to go mad and just start wicking massive shots off that weren't landing and that were hitting the guard. Just calm down a bit. And you can see it. This is where it's getting emphasised in the training. We've got 2 videos, weeks apart, doing the same thing. Loading up and smashing. And we've got the Fury fight coming up. Fury is, to his credit, he's one of the more higher IQ fighters in boxing today. He's one of the quicker fighters in boxing today. Do you think, yes, AJ may catch him with one of these shots, but it's the chances are, if AJ couldn't really catch, he was missing the shots against Pulev. Fact. Go and watch it. Missing by miles against Pulev. What do you think going to happen when you're in there with Fury? I'm not saying he can't hit him with it, but I'm saying the odds go down, surely. If 40-year-old Pulev he was missing and weren't landing clean. When AJ threw 4 of them uppercuts into Pulev's guard, it looks good, but Pulev was smiling after it. I said it before, I'll say it again. Imagine if AJ had put one of them uppercuts into Pulev's body. He'd have been folded, 100%. But there wasn't that thinking to it. It was all big, massive power and winding the hips up. When people see it coming, when trained men see it coming, it takes all the sting out. And that's why, as well, I believe, in the Pulev fight, when AJ eventually put Pulev down, Pulev got straight back up. Look at Wilder versus Dinosaur Ortiz. Now, Ortiz is no good, but still, when Wilder threw that right hand, it's like a flick. You don't need all the hips and whatnot. Wilder ain't got no hips. He's straight pipe. You just got to relax and just focus on catching people off guard and landing accurately. They're the 2 main things that matter. So speed, that's the saying, speed and accuracy. What we see here is big, massive, loading up shots, banging away, that can be countered and that leave you off balance. Look at the Ruiz fight again. AJ, I think he swung a big hook, was off balance, because when you load up at the hip so much, people don't realise, when you're working the heavy bag like this, it feels and it looks good. But part of the reason it feels and it looks good is because your hand is bouncing off of something. So it almost corrects your body. Does that make sense? So when AJ loads up here and he throws his big hook and it bounces off the bag, that naturally puts your body back in place again. What happens when you're in a fight and you load up as much, but you hit thin areas, you end up spinning right through it. Does that make sense? On the bag, you hit something and that momentum gets thrown back at you. So it's easy to recoil quickly. When you're in a fight and you throw a shot and Ruiz slipped it or rolled underneath it and you end up spinning right through and your chin's in the air and your arms wrapped around your body. Do you know what I'm saying? That's what happened. Caught off balance and then clipped. AJ don't need to be working on these kind of things again and again and again. Yes, it can be used as a cardio blowout. Right, we're going to bang hooks until our arms fall off. Fine. But it's you've got to know its place. The way AJ's team are training, they're all, they're like fangirling, like it's doing something. Like this is the thing he needs to be working on. His team is the most bum team going. And it's not just AJ's team's fault. boxing in general, the level of training is poor at best. It's a whole load of bums, in my opinion, who do the training in boxing. I'm sorry, it's the truth. People aren't thinking laterally. They're not thinking about being dynamic. There's a lot of meatheads. It's not their fault. I'm just calling a spade here. It's the bottom line. We're 10 years in, and we're still banging the heavy bag like it's robbed your boots. You know what I'm saying? Like it stole something from you. There's got to be at some point some level changing, some power. Do you know what I'm saying? Maybe it's just me, or maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. But either way, I'm going to say my piece. So anyway, that's the heavy bag one. Let me go back to the other one. So I want to talk about the other one with the pads in now. So we've seen the one with the heavy bag. This is the pad. So he's got my man holding the string, the elastic band thing, and the other Don's holding the pad. AJ's banging away and hitting the thing. It's just more winding up, isn't it? I mean, I'm not sure what else to say. To AJ's credit, at least this time, his backhand, because one of the things AJ used to do was his backhand, his right hand, when he throw a shot, it'd come down. But at least they're working on that. That seems to be quite tight throughout the move, but still. When's the finesse? When are we going to see AJ just touch two back to back? Do you know what I'm saying? Just flick two hooks out and then bang one to the body. Just a bit of variety in there. And a bit of finesse. Even on this pad thing, you can see AJ's hand is hitting different points of the pad. The pad isn't that big, obviously, but still. One of the things I talk about is when you throw a hook, or when you throw any shot, any power shot, hook or uppercut or right hand, every shot you land, you want your two big knuckles to be the point of contact. That's where you want the pressure that's where you want your power and your weight to go through. When you see Fury hits with his wrist. Not thinking about what he's doing, just slapping. Again, this is why I say boxing trainers are meatheads. They don't know what they're doing. When you throw a shot, you want all the power to go through your two big knuckles. That's the point of contact. Not your wrist, not your open palm, not your two small knuckles that get broken. You want the two big knuckles, and why they're important is, when you look at it's your index finger and your middle finger. When you look at them knuckles, they're bigger, they're stronger. But if you can land right on there and put that pressure through two knuckles rather than your whole wrist, like your wrist is much more flatter and softer, or your open palm is a lot more flatter and softer than them two knuckles are. If you can get your power, if you can hit someone on the chin with them two knuckles, it's game over, or it's going to have a lot more impact. If you can hit someone on the solar plexus with them two knuckles, it's having a lot more impact than it is with your wrist or with your open hand or whatever. And that's the bottom line. These things aren't being, these people, I don't know what's going on, but they ain't thinking about the process of what they're doing. It's kind of like, okay, we're going to bang this until we get tired. That's good 10 years ago when you're an amateur. We've got to move things on. Listen, maybe I'm talking rubbish. I don't know. You man can decide. But yeah, I don't know what's going on in the rest of the camp. I'm just saying that the whole loading up thing for me is kind of played out now, especially when you've got Tyson Fury in front of you, who, in my opinion, it's going to be more about volume. I'd rather see AJ putting smart combinations together, 4, 5, 6 punches together on the inside with his chin down and whatnot, working, getting the volume in. Because when Mike Tyson won fights, or the main reason Mike Tyson won fights was because of pressure and volume. The people he didn't knock out was because of pressure and volume. He won every fight because of pressure and volume. Same as Canelo Alvarez. That's the approach that needs to come. And I think if AJ goes in there and pressures and volumes Fury, i.e. if AJ's on the front foot and he's moving forward and he's putting combos together on the inside, you're winning the rounds. The minute you're going backwards in a fight, the odds are against you. If that makes sense. Unless you're like Fury against Vlad, where Vlad wasn't throwing any punches either. Does that make sense? But if you're getting backed up and the other person's working, you're on the back foot there. AJ must be on the front foot, putting pressure and working. That way you're ticking the rounds. Even if you are getting hit with a few flicky jabs here and there, you're winning the rounds. And then eventually, Fury ain't going to be able to take that much pressure. Eventually, if AJ's been working from round 1 to round 8, about round 9, he'll be ready to go. He'll be knackered of being worked all over, like a heavy bag. But you got to get that work in. This big 1 or 2 shots, there's probably a 5 or 10% chance AJ goes in there and loads up and Fury's chin's magically in the air and he clips it. That can't be the game plan. Surely not. The Pulev fight, that's what the Pulev fight looked like to me. Okay, we're going to go in there, not break Pulev down, put a few jabs here and there, and then we're going to load up and just go headhunting and then go mad. That's what happened. The whole fight, it was little weak jabs, and there was no double jab, there was no triple jab, there was no breaking him down. It was kind of like, oh, we're going to airy-fairy, and then just go mad. There was no transition. There was no momentum that built into a finish. It was kind of just one or the other. We're going mad, or we're not doing a lot. That can't work for the Fury fight. Because whilst Pulev wasn't doing anything either, that's Pulev. He's 40 years old. He's not really coming to win as such. You know what I mean? He's not a champion. He's got nothing to lose. He's there for a payday. I don't think Fury is going to turn up just for a payday. If he signs a fight, that is. If Fury signs the fight, he'll come to win. So in them rounds, like where AJ took 10 rounds off or 8 rounds off, AJ will lose them rounds. Does that make sense? The ones he was winning easily against Pulev, the chances are he's going to be losing them rounds he was taking off. Because of the height dynamics and the length dynamics and whatnot. So you can't be doing that. You can't be banking on, oh, I'm going to catch him and a big shot will get me out of jail. Like the Pulev fight did. It's got to be a chin down, elbows in, pressure job. And all this big loading up stuff, it doesn't do you no favours. What good is it? Going mad. Look at the AJ versus Vlad fight. Look at the AJ versus Pulev fight. The Vlad fight, though, in round 5, I think it was. He goes mad, runs out of gas for 3 rounds. There's no point hitting air and not getting no payback from it. Let's work. I'd rather AJ go in there, yeah, and focus on hitting something. Whether it's your arms, whether it's his arms, his body, his head, just hit something. Because trust me, when you're a trained 250-pound man and you're hitting shoulders and whatnot, they're going to know about it. Look at Callum Smith. Canelo worked his arm and busted his bicep. Couldn't throw it. I think that's a massively underused part of boxing, to be fair. People neglect it. I think if I was a boxing trainer, I'd say, you know what? We know Fury's got a little bit of head movement. Let's just work his arms. Because he ain't going to be knocking no one out. He ain't going to be causing no damage if we give him 2 dead arms. Look at Callum Smith. Look at Conor McGregor. He got his leg bust. But the same principle can be applied to boxing. We're going to bust his arms. And in boxing, you've only got arms. If you blow someone's bicep out, and if Canelo Alvarez at 168 can blow someone's bicep out, you best believe AJ can do the same. But you're not going to do it in one shot. You have to work people. Every round, we're going to land 20 shots on his arms for the first 6 rounds. And by then, he'll be finished. But you've got to have that mentality. And you've got to have that game plan and train for it. You can't be training for be slamming one heavy shot in an inaccurate fashion. But oh yeah, and just before I go, when I was editing this video, I realised that I accidentally stumbled on a few snapshots. So you'll see these snapshots on your screen now. Now, this essentially shows you part of what I was talking about in some detail. These snapshots are obviously paused in time, and you see what's actually happening with AJ's body. Look at how crossed over his arms are. Like when in boxing, have you ever seen someone in this kind of position? Just all crossed up, arms all crossed up, all to load a shot. Show me when. Show me when Mike Tyson knocked someone out after doing all that kind of... just madness. You're never going to be in that position in boxing, where you're spun right round. Ever. And it explains why, in AJ's fights, we see him loading up and hitting thin air. It's being practiced. Don't practice things you're never going to do. Surely don't do them all the time. Otherwise, We are we are our habits. If you constantly train, just loading up, and I've never seen, to be fair, I'll be honest with myself, I've never seen it done another way. I've never seen a video of him just touching and just flicking and working on that kind of power. Work on the flick power, the short, sharp, didn't see it coming power. That's the power that really matters. And I think that's the main reason why we don't see them kind of knockouts from AJ. The best example of AJ doing what I'm talking about would be the Charles Martin fight. See the difference there? Why is it AJ was plastering Pulev and couldn't really get him out of there? Look at the Charles Martin fight. Short, simple. No all this loading up. Yep. Just flick the right hand up. Similar actually. More or less the same as how Wilder knocked out Ortiz. But what you saw AJ do there with the right hand against Charles Martin was exactly the same thing I'm talking about. You can do it with the hooks. It's just about becoming habit. Look at Ryan Garcia. Just a flick. An accurate flick. You got to get your timing right, but it's all about the placement. It's not about the loading up and the raw force of it. The best KOs come when they don't see them and it's just natural. It's a natural fluid movement. All this twisting your hips and look at the arm position, all twisted up. I've never seen anything like it in an actual fight. On the pads it's great because there's no comeuppance or you don't get any, there's no like, the pad don't hit back, does it? But imagine if you put your body in that position in the fight, all crossed up. You're gonna get knocked out or countered or timed as he did in the Ruiz fight. Anyway, I'm not going to keep going over it, but yeah, this is a no from me. Not to be focusing on this. And there's about 10 man deep in the camp, and they're all like, oh yeah, they're all thinking this is great. It's very poor. Bring me in. All these little things won't be happening. Let's tell you now. You go from whatever this goofy stuff is to about 20 levels higher, no doubt.